I want to show you all promising underdogs and favorites that I noticed for UFC 301 Pantoja versus Erceg. I'll also give you my final probability for those fighters' victories as well as their stat differentials. Please do me a favor and like and subscribe if you find this informative, helpful, or even entertaining. I've also added my Patreon information in the description if you want to support me through that. Definitely not required, but it would be very much appreciated. Running this data and editing takes hours every day and week, so I'd really appreciate the support. And thanks to everyone who has shown me support recently. Also, if you like detailed breakdowns and predictions, I do those videos weekly as well for full cards, including the prelims, so feel free to check those out on the channel. Let's go ahead and jump right in. First, let's take a look at promising underdogs. The fighters' names are on the leftmost column, followed by their probability of victories that I presented to you guys in the prediction video earlier this week. These probabilities aren't only based on several data science prediction models, which have been trained for accuracy, but also other qualitative information as well, such as a fighter's momentum, their recent performances, their career's trajectory, their psychological factors, their training camps, weight cuts, and a bunch of other stuff. Then I've also provided stat advantages for fighters compared to their opponent. Now, I've excluded stat differentials where one of the fighters has a 0 for their stats, otherwise that could be a little bit misleading and I don't want to mislead you guys. So first, let's take a look at promising underdogs. The first promising underdog that I wanted to highlight in this video is Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo absorbs a little bit less strikes per minute, he has a better striking defense, he lands more takedowns on average, he has a higher takedown accuracy, and he has a higher takedown defense. Now, I gave Jose Aldo a 40% probability, but now that I'm looking back at him, his career, and what he's done in MMA, I would actually kind of bump that up, but I gave him a 40% probability. I think he actually has a better chance of getting it done here, and I think he's a great underdog to put in this video because he's a veteran of the sport, he has a very respectable resume, and a list of accomplishments that he's contributed to MMA. He's the former UFC featherweight champion, and he's defeated many top contenders. His experience can help him potentially outclass Martinez. He also has a great striking ability, including devastating leg kicks. He's considered one of the best leg kickers in MMA history, and he has ended many fights with crippling low kicks. Now, Martinez is also a leg kicker, and he has won a couple fights via leg kick TKO, but Aldo's experience really gives him an edge in this fight. He will also have the home crowd advantage, as Brazilian fans will be rooting for him as a hero in this fight, which definitely has an impact on his confidence. A few other things that I wanted to mention for Aldo is that at one point in his career, he went on an 18-fight win streak, so this guy can definitely scrap, and he's very technical with his fighting. He's only ever suffered 3 back-to-back losses before snapping right back and getting a win. He's won 79% of his fights and finished 58% of his wins. He also has wins over several different rounds, so he's not just a first-round finisher or someone who always takes it to the judges. And he's won 13 of his 20 UFC fights, many of which have been very challenging. Aldo is an obvious pick of mine for a promising underdog in this card. He holds a lot of value for UFC 301, and I think if he can leverage all of his experience and his skill set, he can definitely defeat Martinez. The next promising underdog that I wanted to highlight, and I know this one's a little bit of a weird one, it's Jack Shore, who is actually one of my picks for this card. Jack Shore lands a little bit more strikes per minute, he has a better striking accuracy, he absorbs a few less strikes per minute, he has a higher strike defense, he lands more takedowns on average, and has a higher takedown defense. Now, I gave Jack Shore a conservative 52.1% probability of victory, but I think he's a good underdog to feature because he can take the fight into deep waters and potentially wear Brito down using his grappling and cardio. Now, Brito definitely is powerful and he has to be very careful, but Jack Shore is more of a technical fighter. All he really needs to do, and I'm making it sound simple, I know it's never this simple, but he needs to survive the early rounds where Brito's power and his advantages will truly shine. Now, over the course of the fight, he'll wear Brito down potentially and constantly add that grappling pressure to drain his stamina, and then eventually, possibly, find an opening for a submission or grind out a decision win. Now, some of the things that I wanted to mention for Jack Shore that are going in his favor include the fact that he's won 94% of his total fights. And I know statistics aren't everything, but that still speaks to his capabilities here and his potential. He's also won 6 out of his 7 UFC fights. He has a 76% finishing rate. 9 of his 17 wins have been through submission, and lastly, his most recent loss was nearly 2 years ago. I think there's a decent chance for Jack Shore to get the win here, and thus I think there's some value that is out there if you guys want to also root for him. So I wanted to highlight him for you all in this video. Now the next promising underdog that I wanted to highlight is William Gomez. William Gomez has a height advantage of 5 inches. He's a year younger, which I know isn't much, but he's still a younger fighter. He has a reach advantage of 4 inches, which definitely has an impact on a fight. He absorbs about 2.5 or a little over 2.5 less strikes per minute, and he has a 18% higher striking defense and a 10% higher takedown accuracy. Now, I gave William Gomez a 40.7% probability of victory, and I think he's a good underdog to feature because he's a knockout artist with devastating power. He's a southpaw fighter with a compact build, and he excels in the pocket, especially with his uppercuts and hooks, which can overwhelm Silva. If Gomez can maintain pressure and pour on the power punches while keeping his range and avoiding takedowns, there's a chance that he could pull off this upset. Some other key things that I wanted to mention in Gomez's favor include the fact that he's coming off of a 12-fight win streak, which gives him insane momentum. He's also won all 3 of his UFC fights. His most recent loss was all the way back in 2016. He's also won 87% of his total fights, and he's finished 62% of his wins. Lastly, 54% of his wins were via KO/TKO, which are 7 fights in total. I think he's a solid underdog if you're looking for value and willing to take a little bit more risk for a better reward. The next promising underdog that I wanted to highlight for you guys is Kevin Borjas. Kevin Borjas has a height advantage of 1 inch, he's 2 years younger, he has a reach advantage of 1 inch, and he lands 1.65 more strikes per minute. I gave Kevin Borjas a 40.1% probability of victory, but I think he's a good underdog to feature because Borjas is the more technical and accurate striker. Now, maybe not on paper, but through observation. He has good fundamentals and he can counter pretty well. Costa loads up on his strikes a bit more, which could create an opening that Borjas can capitalize on. Borjas might also have a bit of an edge when it comes to grappling exchanges with his background. He's coming off of a loss, but to his credit, he's won 82% of his total fights, and he's finished about 90% of his wins, of which 8 out of 9 of his wins have came via KO/TKO, and he's been on a 4-fight winning streak prior to his recent loss. Logically, Alessandro Costa is likely to win this fight, but Kevin Borjas does have a good chance as an underdog to pull off the upset. If you agree or if you had that feeling as well, then go ahead and take this as a confirmation. More risk, more reward. Y'all know how this game goes. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the promising favorites, which I've chosen through 3 main criteria. First, they have a high statistical weighted confidence, either through my prediction models or through fighter stat evaluation, or some combination of both. Second, their opponent doesn't have a very high probability of victory, so you're not going to notice any overlap between the underdogs I just showed you earlier and these fighters. And the third thing is that their odds aren't too expensive. If a fighter has -400 or -700 odds, they're obviously just too expensive to pick, but you could always parlay them if you want. I'm focusing more on finding you guys some value rather than stating the obvious and pointing out those -500 type fighters. So I consider those 3 things, I do all the work for you, and then I show you the valuable picks that fit that criteria. If you want to know how I predict each fight plays out and the results, especially logical rooted predictions, then please go ahead and check out my prediction video from earlier this week where I review stats, each fighter's fight history, the results of my 7 data science prediction models, my final picks, and the methods of victory. For these favorites, I'll briefly review their stat differential advantages. If you want a full breakdown, again, please check out that previous video from earlier this week. Now, the first inexpensive and confident favorite that I wanted to highlight is Yasmin Lucindo. Yasmin Lucindo is 16 years younger, has a reach advantage of 2 inches, absorbs 2.3 less strikes per minute, has a 9% higher striking defense, lands more takedowns on average, has a 40% higher takedown accuracy, and lands 0.2 more submissions on average. Now, I gave Yasmin Lucindo a 66.8% probability of victory, and I think that they are a good favorite to feature. Now, the next inexpensive and confident favorite that I wanted to highlight was Miktaybek Orolbay. Orolbay has a reach advantage of 2 inches, he absorbs 3.53 less strikes per minute, he lands 10.48 more takedowns on average, and has a 50% higher takedown accuracy. I gave Oralby a 62% probability of victory, and I think he's a good favorite to feature in this video. We're breezing through these fighters. You guys know I don't like to waste your time. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight is Drakkar Klose. Drakkar Klose has a height advantage of an inch. He has a reach advantage of an inch. He lands 0.72 more strikes per minute. He has a 14% higher striking accuracy. He absorbs 1.11 less strikes per minute. He lands 1.33 more takedowns on average and has a 4% higher takedown defense. I gave Drakkar Klose a 62% probability of victory, and I think he's a good favorite to feature. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight is Mauricio Ruffy. Ruffy is 2 years younger. He has a reach advantage of an inch. He lands 0.29 more strikes per minute. He has a 12% higher striking accuracy. He absorbs 0.42 less strikes per minute. He has a 4% higher striking defense and has a 24% higher takedown defense. I gave him a final probability of 60.4% once I considered all things, including statistics and things outside of statistics, and I think he's a good fighter to feature in this video. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight is Dione Barbosa. Dione Barbosa has a 5% higher striking accuracy. She absorbs 10.55 less strikes per minute. She has a better striking defense. She lands more takedowns on average and with a better takedown accuracy. I gave her a 66.4% probability of victory, and I think she has a confident chance of getting it done in this fight. And with that said, that wraps up this video. I really appreciate you all for watching and being so supportive. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and check out that Patreon if you want to support me through there for $5 or $10 a month. Your support helps keep me encouraged and motivated to continue running all of this data and analysis and continue to provide you guys all the insights that I possibly can. Thank you all once again, and see you guys in the next one.